everyone. A very warm welcome to Psychology Talks. And as all of you know, that this month I'm dedicating all my live shows to mental health awareness. And from in this regard, all my guests are they will be actually sharing their personal experience, that how they explore themselves and how they are maintaining their well-being. And today's topic I have chosen specifically to awaken yourself within you. That means to find out your true self that is lying within or inside yourself. Because most of the time, what I've seen is like many people are living on an auto mode, and they are living the dream that society has given them. And that's why they feel a bit of a disconnect between themselves and whatever they're doing. And that dissonance creates a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. And you see that a lot of people, a lot of successful people take their lives, they commit suicide because they are not happy with what they are doing, because they have not found out their true self. They have not been living their life as they want. So that's why I'm going to speak today about how to find out your true self, what you want, what are your true dreams, not what others have given you, not what society has told you. And in this regard, I have invited a guest who is very known, and he is an Emmy nominated video producer. He is a president of Spirit Media. He has worked as television, video, and director with a lot of celebrities such as Black Eyed Peas, Gwen Stefani, Maroon 5, and many other more. And but more than that, he is not just a video director or video producer. He is on a journey to find his true self. He found the importance of self awakening when he has experienced some of the near death experience. And from then, he is on a mission to help people to find their true self. So let's welcome Bill Dolan. Welcome to our show. Thank you so much for joining today. It's an honor to have you today with us.
Oh, it's an honor to be here, my friend Embreen. It's we've been connected for a while. This is exciting because it's actually the first time we get to talk face to face, as we've talked and chatted many times, but not like this. So I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, it's been a while that I've been following you on LinkedIn, and your content is so amazingly insightful, and I can relate to it. And I feel that a lot of people should know that what is your mission and how you find out your, true self, how you got into like self awakening. So that's why I really wanted to have that discussion with you. So let's get on. And but before we actually start a discussion, let's tell our audience about yourself. That what is your work and something about yourself, so like our audience get to know you better.
Well, sure. Your description of me in the front end pretty much tells the big overview. I grew up in the television and entertainment business. And so I first started out as a television director for one of the networks here in the United States, and loved what I did, absolutely loved what I did. And it was a great opportunity for me to not just learn the art of television, but also the psychology of media, the psychology of communication, and how companies can use excuse me, how companies can use media to connect with people, but sometimes for the wrong motives. In fact, one of the things I learned growing up in television was that most media is really designed to sell you on your inadequacy. That is to say, you're not really good enough until you buy my product or wear my clothes or smell like my product or drive my car or live in my house. And so I was able to take the lessons from that. And eventually I started my own agency and really tried to say, how can I produce content that is meaningful and encouraging and uplifting? How can I work for companies that are doing great things in the world? And how can I take every day and make a difference. Now, I didn't really, honestly, I went in with this diving into my own agency, not realizing that as I was doing this, my own success would take me traveling and away from my family. And sadly, I became somewhat of an absentee father and an absentee husband. I was gone all the time, and I showed up and, for certain things, but I wasn't there for the important things. In fact, my kids would tell you now as they're adults that, Dad, even when you were present, you weren't really present. Your head, your heart, your mind wasn't there with us, just your body. And I was trying to think of kind of what could be better, what could be more fulfilling, what could round that out better. And I got an opportunity to do a documentary project. And I thought, wow, this is going to be great. Because if I do a documentary, I can pour myself into the work, but then the revenue can trail off for a period and I can start another project. So I'm not always on this travel rat race. And on January 28th, 1999, I got an opportunity to go to Nashville, Tennessee, where a company said, we like your work and we want to sign you to a deal and we're going to write you a big check. And I thought, man, I'll tell you, everything in my life is going to change today because this is going to be it. This is going to be it. I'm going to be, I had all these things, what I was going to be, but it wasn't what I thought. And 20 minutes into that flight, I started to feel ill. And I couldn't put my finger on it. I was like, things were closing in on me, like I was sick. And I was traveling with my best friend, who's a gospel singer, Timothy Greenidge, best buddy. He's a giant guy. And I just said, Tim, something's not right. And that's the last thing I said before my eyes rolled back in my head and my arms flopped by my side and my heart stopped. Now, Tim didn't know CPR officially, but he tried to do chest compressions. And when that didn't work, he picked me up and he put me in the aisle and he just kept working on me and nothing was happening, nothing. And as he explains it to me, he was just ready to pull back his fist and he was going to break my ribs, whatever it was going to take to get my heart started. And as he pulled back, I took a breath. Now, I can tell you that changed my life in so many ways. I mean, certainly number one was I had a medical condition that we discovered that resulted in me having a pacemaker today. It resulted in me having a very profound spiritual experience that changed my life. And I write about it. I actually wrote a book about it called 7drm.com. I go into more detail there. But the biggest thing was the ripple that happened. And I see this probably for every human being, but especially for people like me who don't always get things the first time. It takes a profound incident to wake us up. And this was the profound wake up for me, for all the things that I thought about what life was about, what I needed to do and what I needed to be. It changed me and began a ripple of awakenings, if you will. It's not a light switch, but it was a slow illumination that continues today. And that changed my life forever. It's changed our business. And like I said, I ended up writing a book about it. And I'm on that discovery about myself and about others and about this incredible journey we call life.
Thank you so much for like, it's an inspirational journey. I know, like you shared your journey on like a couple of LinkedIn posts as well, and it's actually what I have seen is that you need some sort of an incident to jolt to get that awakening. Like for me, I would say that I did get like at some time, at some point in time, like I was so depressed that I had like suicidal thoughts, serious suicidal, and I was like almost about to commit suicide. And I think that was the time that I feel that that was a turning point in my life. So I think every person needs some sort of like a jolt, a special, like a big sort of a shake up or a wake up call, you can say. to come out from that state of mind where we are living on a mode of an autopilot mode, where, like, we know that, okay, we have to earn a degree and then have establish a career, earn money, and that's it. It's life is not just all about that. I feel that life is much more than that. And when we find out that purpose, I think then we start living. That is, prior to that, life is just like passing days. And if we are just passing days, we are not living life to the fullest. So I think, in my opinion, I feel like finding out that purpose give us that awakening. Now, coming up to the like main discussion, um, what do you think that, why people are like not get into that mode of self awakening? What actually stops them to get into that mode? Why do they actually think? What do you think that why they are spending life on the autopilot mode? What's
Well,
your opinion?
I think one of the biggest challenges that we face is that um, we learn different ways. I mean, some people learn by hearing, by reading, but most of us learn by modeling. We model the behavior that has been shown to us as being this is the way. And we have a whole trail of bad models in front of us for generations. And I think about myself. I can't speak for everybody, but it just look. Growing up in the Western United States, you're told that you're supposed to go to school, get an education, obey your parents, um, don't do anything illegal or bad,
Yes,
get a job, uh, start a family. And then you're surrounded by marketing and media that says, "Oh, and you want to know at what level you're doing it? Are you barely doing it? Are you doing it well? Are you doing it really well? Are you doing really well?" And deep down, I think all of us desperately desire. I mean, after Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it says, "Look, do I have food and shelter? Do I feel safe?" But then to love and to have these aspirational things, we desperately want to love and be loved. And the world is telling us, oh, if you do this, you'll be loved. If you do this. So we have this feeling, this hunger, this craving for which we don't know the real root of it. But there's a world that wants to offer us bad solutions of how you're going to realize it. And so we chase that. And it seems natural. It's almost as natural as I'm tired, I should sleep. I'm thirsty, I should drink. I need love, I better get a job that makes me have a good title. If I want to be esteemed, I better, you know, be marry into a certain family. So there's clues out there that are ultimately telling us that you're going to be loved, and they're all a lie.
yes,
And until we realize the lie that they are, we continue to chase them. And the chase itself can rob us from having the vision to see what's really going on.
yeah,
So while we're
yes,
in the chase, we miss the whole thing. And only in that moment of either desperation or aspiration do you have a moment of pause. And that's when you really see what's going on.
yeah. That's like you brilliantly defined it. Like, basically, that you've said that we are on a rat race, right? Like, and that is on the illusion, actually. Everyone is in a rat race, and they've been chasing an illusion which is maybe created by the society, the culture, media, as you said. So, and the entire life is wasted by just chasing all these illusions. And then, when at the time when they realize, most of the time time is almost over. So I this is important to actually realize that what is our desire, what is our need, what is our wish to actually live the life that we want. Here comes my next question, that, like, maybe for you and for me, it was a moment that we did realize that, okay, there was a time that we need to stop that rat race and connect to our inner self. But it should not be the case with everyone. So what do you think, what are the best ways to connect with our inner self or to awaken our, like, ourselves within ourselves, how we can do that?
Well, I I wish I could tell you a great lesson because for me, um, uh, I'm one of those people. I call myself a two by four learner. In other words, I learn things when I'm hitting the head with a two by four, and and that's what's happened to me a lot of times. In fact, my life, well, it has so much blessing and so much success. It's punctuated by moments of absolute failure and moments that were like, oh my goodness, that's horrible. Um, and so I think life is really good at throwing at situations at us that make us wake up.
Yeah.
The question is whether we use it or not. Um, in fact, I have a friend who used to be a soldier, and he was a prisoner of war back in Vietnam. And he had a saying. He said that I think it was tragedy is a horrible thing to waste.
Yeah, that's so profound. Yeah.
And so I think that is one thing is that if we can just give ourselves that moment of pause, give ourselves that moment of reflection. When I think about life in general, being aware of our circumstances is the first breakthrough. Is can you be aware? And then the second thing then is what I'm experiencing mean? What does that um, ask of me? And what can I learn from that? It reminds me a lot. Uh, I grew up early on. I always dreamed of driving. I thought driving was cool. And the thing that's interesting about driving is that you get behind the wheel, you press on the gas, and you can go a lot of places without ever understanding what's going on under the hood.
Yeah.
And that's like life. We spend a lot of time learning how to look through a dashboard, press on the gas, and feel the exhilaration of movement without knowing what's going on underneath the hood. But at least a car has these little red lights in it. If you're flying a plane or riding a car, it has these little lights. And what they do is they say, oops, you don't have enough fuel. Or
Yeah.
oops, you're overheating. Or oops, there's something going on in the engine that isn't right. Well, those red lights are red because they make us pay attention. And we don't have that benefit in most of our lives. But it's a soft red light that says, how are you feeling? Are you tired? Do you feel depressed? What is that feeling of sadness you have? In fact, I'll just tell you, Ambreen, about a year and a half ago, I lost my mother.
Oh.
And I have spent most of my life running from sadness. I didn't I didn't want to feel sad. I didn't want to feel hurt. In fact, early on in my life, because I had an abusive situation with my father as a child, I was very angry. And so what I would do is instead of recognizing what was going on, I would try to run from it or I would mask it. Those are the two things I did. And I can tell you now that I'm an older gentleman, I finally recognize the scent of sadness in the room. I finally recognize the scent of frustration or hurt or all those things that we all feel. Instead of masking it, it's now something I recognize like that red light. And it says, pause, pull the car over. Let's check the engine. Let's make sure that we're fueled properly. Let's make sure maybe there's water to make sure it isn't overheated so that we can go on this journey in a healthy way instead of running ourselves and our lives into the ground.
Yeah. That's very true. And as like a lot of comments we got from the audience as well, that like the great analogy about the car and the life is basically most of the time I feel that when we try to be someone else, mask ourselves, keep on putting mask on ourselves, and like and then we lose ourselves in that. Like when we're trying to put something else, we're trying to be someone else, and then that is where like I feel that that is the more disconnect happen, and then that is, and when there is a more disconnect, we feel more exhausted, as you mentioned that when we're running out of something. Because the thing is that I actually feel that we are not just are the physical bodies. The true self is our soul. And then when that disconnect happens, we, like, our soul is there and our physical bodies are there, like they're going in separate direction. And then I feel that then it happens, the more anxiety, the exhaustion. And I think that is when and we feel like a lot of people sometimes feel the soul loss experience, or feel the existential crisis. So I think that is something that happens with most of the. So, like, coming back to the discussion, especially about the mental health situation, as we see that like the numbers are really really bad, and it's so sad to see that a lot of people are suffering from depression, suicidal thoughts, and they are committing suicide. So, in your opinion, what is the major reason why people are feeling so much sad or having so much mental health problem in current times?
Well, I think there's a lot of things at stake here. Number one, again, going back to how Maslow had really created a hierarchy, and not to say that everything a psychologist says is true, but I think there's so much brilliance to this that if you think about someone who's hungry or thirsty or can't get air, that's all we think about. That's all we think about. And then the next step is really to feel safe before we move into that idea of love and belonging, relationship, and self-actualization, that higher process. And it's interesting that over the course of the last 2.5 years, in large part due to COVID and the news that's happened, an entire world, I would say that even though there's people in our world, sadly, that struggle with food every day, and there's people in our world that struggle with safety every day, it's a small portion of the world. But with COVID, virtually everybody had to encounter their own safety. They didn't have to do that before. Most of us go through life, even whether we are aware or unaware, feeling somewhat safe, feeling like I have the bases covered, and they're not thinking, am I going to die tomorrow? Or am I going to eat tomorrow? But an entire world had to ask the question, who might die tomorrow?
Yeah.
And as we know, on the average, every minute, about 150,000 people die. And it was now on the headlines everywhere, and not just from COVID, in general. The minute you violate that safety threshold, we've moved from a place of self actualization to survival. And for an entire culture that has not had to live like that, they had to feel feelings they haven't felt since, well, hard to say when. And they had to feel it at a level that they didn't have to. And a swirl of emotions about safety, survival, and what's important to me all came in. And like that car I was talking about, at least when you have the lights, you can say, well, that's related to that, and that's related to that. Emotions and feelings are like gas in a way. Now, here where I live, we have a thing called radon. It's like carbon monoxide. It's colorless, It's tasteless, it has no smell, but the effects of it will slowly build up and kill you. And I think that a lot of our emotions, without recognition of what we're feeling and where those feelings come from, are like that radon. And they build up and they build up and they build up. We don't even realize what's happening to us until we have to experience the serious consequences of it. And that serious consequences, like radon, could be death, or in the case of mental health, sadness, depression, exhaustion, anger, frustration, all those different things that come, and we'll weave that in, and we know that it's both a spiritual, a and it's also a chemical battle in our brain. Those chemicals released in our brain essentially give the same sensation as being high in a very negative way.
Yeah.
So imagine walking around to everybody in your world and giving them an injection that's both creates anxiety and depression at the same time.
Yeah.
And watch what happens to our world.
Yeah.
That's really what we're seeing in a subtle way.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's very true. Because what we've seen is like a lot of people usually go through the emotions and feeling without even actually recognizing that what they're feeling, and then that is how they get trapped in this in the feeling or emotion. Because, for example, like if they're having a thought about um, or having like negative thoughts that they make them which make them feel sad, then like they tend to like linger on in that state for longer time, and then they don't know what to do with this because they are actually going with the flow of their thoughts and their mind is creating the sadness around them, and they cannot just break the thoughts pattern because they know themselves that what is happening to them. They are just going into the flow of thoughts and emotions, and that is how they, like, gradually going into the state of depression or sadness. And or that is how, like, once the person is depressed or sad, they actually then they get aloof, and then everything bad started to happen in their life. It's just because they are into the state of that emotion, or or they're in the state which actually is created by their mind themselves, and they just need to actually break that thought pattern and that to come out from that state. And sometimes it's possible by themselves, but most of the time it's not possible to come out from themselves, to like come out from that state by themselves. That's why it's very important to seek help. I mean, and there is no, literally no shame in seeking help for mental health, because there is a like big stigma attached with this. Like if they openly announce that they are depressed, or they openly announce that they are having anxiety attacks or panic attacks, or they have the trauma from the past, that is why that is actually break them to seek help. So stop them to seek help. So I think that is one thing, as you already said, that they don't know what's happening to them. They are going, they are having, they are living in that state of mind, which is creating more depression, anxiety, and they're creating like more mental health problem. But the only way is just to actually, I feel, seeking help. What do you think? What are the other ways they can help, they can what are the ways to actually have the mental well-being by themselves, or by taking help from others? What do you think? What are, how they can come out from that state?
Well, I absolutely agree, and I think we have enough going on in our world that probably all of us have been directly or indirectly affected by mental health. And I mean, the truth is, all of us have to be aware of our own mental health and recognize that it is something we need to take care of, just like, our bodies, our sleep, drinking fluids, eating healthy, all those different things, that this is real. It's very, very real. In fact, I had a friend who was going through some issues, and and they were really struggling and felt embarrassed that they were feeling this way. And I had to say, look, mental health would is no different than if, let's say, you sprain your ankle and you hurt your ankle or you broke your leg. Okay. The thing about breaking our leg is the pain is clear and it's isolated and it's identifiable. Mental health comes in like a fog off the ocean. And what happens is instead of creating clarity, it creates sometimes confusion. And it's that part that makes it hard to identify and late to recognize. But as long as all of us can, one, say, look, it's real. It's very, very real. That first step then is, yes, awareness. In fact, I live on the Pacific Ocean. And one of the things I remember my mom, God bless her, used to always tell me is be careful in the ocean because there's undercurrents. And I remember as a little boy getting in the ocean and getting absorbed with floating around in the ocean and only looking up uh, like a minute or two later and realize I had moved 50 feet because the current had taken me. So when we're self absorbed, it's hard to recognize what's happening around us. We're hurting or when we're not trying to be objective and alert. But looking up all of a sudden created context. And you want to know the same way that I learned about that issue about the ocean. I also learned that there's people on the side called lifeguards. There's
Yeah.
people with floaty devices, whatever, and people that have learned the current and learn how to swim who can come out and help you, either coach you from the shore or come out and get you. And and so it's hard when you're in that space. Let's just recognize it's hard. And that's why it's incumbent upon all of us to say, how can I take care of me in a way that allows me to love and honor and respect the people around me and maybe see a current in their life that they don't see. It doesn't mean, for example, I'm a dad. None of my kids want me to be their therapist. None of them. I don't know why. I think I've got a lot of answers, but they don't want me to be their therapist. But I'll tell you what they do want me to be. They want me to love them and support them, encourage them. And occasionally I'll say something that they don't want to hear, but I do it as an act of love. And so if we take care of ourselves and become more aware of the current, it will help us to be that person that either calls out from the shore or throws that life raft. Because now, like you said, Embreen, more people than ever need to know the current exists, but there's people around you with a life raft who love you and care about you and want the best for you. And that's what I want to be for others.
Yeah, I love the way you actually explain through these example. I love the example of the currents because that's how we get into it, and we don't even realize that we are drifting slowly towards towards the danger. Somebody like Sina is a good friend, and he is asking that is crying is a sign of depression, and do you think that like he said that he meant that it's crying in loneliness, and do you think that it's a sign of depression? And I think, of course, the next question would be like how to handle that. So, what do you think? Uh,
Well, yeah, I think crying is a sign of sadness. I mean, we cry because we're hurt, and we can be hurt physically and emotionally and psychologically. And so crying is just a natural expression of being hurt. Um, and I think it's okay to cry. I can tell you, again, I've not shared this with many people, but when I was growing up, because of the abusive situation I was in, I was screamed at and told not to cry. And I had trained myself not to cry. Um, so I didn't have that release. And crying, in a way, is like that red light on the road of life. It's that little thing that says, yes, something's hurting. Now,
yeah,
sometimes the act of crying and expression can be in itself just a point of healing.
Yeah.
But if you can't stop crying at all, then there's a sign that there's something that needs to be addressed. Now, is it depression? Depends on how you describe depression. Um, I call depression for me, it is absolute emotional exhaustion when you have absolutely nothing left. If you're crying, you've got something left. But if after you've cried and you have nothing left, to me, that's depression.
Yeah.
And um, even when you're crying, I think it's good to find someone to cry with because it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of being human.
Yeah, that's very true. And as you said, like crying is a sign of sadness. But what is causing the sadness, and for how long it's lingering on? That matters a lot. Like for example, okay, sometimes we cry and we feel lighthearted. I feel like we feel good after crying. So that sign that okay, we healed up and we realize that what was causing us to cry. But even after crying, you are lost and you feel like keep on crying, then I think this is the sign that tells you that you need to take help. Otherwise, I feel there's no harm in crying, and in front of others also, or in loneliness. So it's perfectly fine to cry. That's my opinion.
And I think,
So
and I think it's,
yeah,
I was going to say, I think it's good to be able to cry. I mean,
yeah,
now I'll tell you, I cry all the time, but I'm happy to say I cry because I'm happy. I'm
yeah,
cry because I'm moved. I cry because I get to another day of life in hopes that I can bless another life. I cry when I realize how fortunate I am. I cry when I think about how blessed I am. Um, so having being able to cry, I think is so incredibly valuable. In something you touched on, I think it's really important. And I think, I don't know if it's a man and a woman thing, but I know it's definitely a man thing.
yeah,
We don't want to be weak. We think weakness is wrong and bad, and we don't want that. We want to be strong. So what happens is that when we recognize that we are human and we do have feelings, and it isn't a sign of weakness, um, we think that it makes us vulnerable and someone's going to take advantage of us or someone's not going to respect us. In other words, those self-actualization goals to be
yeah,
loved and respected are going to be violated. So one of the things, again, I learned as a child is I would wear the mask of anger.
yeah,
And when you're frustrated and and we get angry for two main reasons. Number one, we're hurt, or number two, we're frustrated. In other words, something didn't happen the way we thought it should happen. That makes us angry. And so when you feel angered, you have to ask, is it a conversion of hurt, or is it a conversion of an outcome that didn't match with my expectation?
yeah,
Then recognize that. But anger can become a tool because it can make people afraid of you. And when you think people are afraid of you, you have power. When you have people recoil from you, you have power. When you have people wondering, what's he going to do now? You feel power. And the one thing about being hurt is you feel powerless.
yeah,
And anger gives you the illusion of power. And for us who have been down that game, to recognize that it is an effective mask, but it's a destructive mask.
yeah,
And it is a mask that will suffocate the humanity from you
yeah.
if you choose to wear that every day.
Yeah, that's like you explained it so well. I'm afraid like we are actually towards like reaching to the end of the show. So before we close the show, what advice you would give to our audience today to actually find their true selves and so or to have self awakening? What is one advice would you like to give to our audience?
Well, I would say It's what we started with, Embreen. It is it is to pause, just to pause. Now, there are many cultures and many faiths that promote meditation, um, and uh, um, and I'm not advocating for one particular tactic or tool, but if you keep running, if we keep running, then it leaves us in a life of reacting and robs us of reflecting. And if we can recognize every day with every circumstance and can move into a state of awareness where we'd say, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling that? And is there something I need to do about that that is healthy and productive? That is a giant step, a giant step. But the second step, which is really exciting, is when you get to a place where you can be at peace about the fact that you're a human being on a journey. You're going to make mistakes. You are not as smart today as you will be tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that even today, the fact that you took a breath is an incredible blessing from the divine that says you have a purpose, you have meaning, you have something powerful and miraculous to bring to the world. And when you get to that place to think, how can I look and give grace to others? How can I be that person now that doesn't just try to survive, but I can be that person that gives a life raft to someone, to gives that encouragement to someone, to give that hope to someone. And we start lifting each other up. That will be the most exciting breakthrough, maybe one of the most exciting breakthroughs you'll ever live, because you will not have been born, but you start to understand the purpose and the meaning behind the value and power you have in your life. And I'm excited for that for you.
Yeah, I mean that's such wonderful advice. Um, we had such a lovely discussion today, and I'm sure our audience have learned a lot from you. And so, before we close the show, please tell our audience that how they can reach out to you. Like, what's the best way? Like through the email, through LinkedIn DM, or any other social media like we do have. So, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Well, there's really two ways. One, I am on LinkedIn. That's how Ambreen and I became dear friends, is through LinkedIn, and we're going to be friends for life. And so, thank
Sure.
you, LinkedIn, for creating that opportunity for us. Also, I did write a book about one my death experience, and not only what it taught me about life, but I come from television and media, and the world of marketing is something that all of us in business have to deal with. And so I wrote a book called The Seven Disciplines of Relationship Marketing. And you can reach me through that website, which is seven, like the number seven, drm.com. There you can get the book, reach out to my team, get in touch with me, schedule a meeting, all those wonderful things. So I'm available there and would love to be able to connect with any and all of you.
Okay, that's great. I will put the link in the chat after our show so people can actually get to know, and they like whenever they need they can reach out to you. So thank you so much for joining, and if anyone of our audience have any question, feel free to DM us, me or Bill, anytime through LinkedIn, through his website, or through any other social media. He's also on like Insta and Twitter, I guess, and LinkedIn. So wherever you want to reach out from whichever social media site. So thank you for joining us, whoever joined us from our audience from all across the globe. Thank you so much from to join our conversation and making it lively through your comments. I will go through each of the comment after the show and definitely will reply to you. And thank you so much, Bill, for joining us. And it was a great discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, so much. I really appreciate you so much.
Okay, bye bye and take care.